Ladies and gentlemen, like few other of the great masters, Mr. Costa Gavras has changed the way we see movies, but he's also changed the way we see society, and therefore I think this makes him one of the true and unique, outstanding masters in the art of the cinema. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Costa Gavras. For the second time now, you're president of the Cinémathèque Française, an honor and a wonderful job of yours that you already had in the 80s when you were heading the Cinémathèque between 1982 and 87, I think. So may I just start from this film lover's point of view, because I yesterday saw you following the French competition film, and you seem to be much more interested in other people's works than in seeing your own film again. So I mean, what is it about for you to be heading this organization of film lovers?
As a matter of fact, my colleagues asked me to be the president of the Cinémathèque, but there's not a big job, by the way. They have a group of people working very strongly. They do very good job. But I like to be part of the cinema. If I can help, I'm ready to do it. I think Cinémathèque, it's a center very important. We have something like 200 people working in the Cinémathèque. We have a museum, we have a library, we have a photothèque, and we collect movies. We must have something 40,000 movies, and we show 4 different movies every day. And the idea is to show sometimes all the movies of a director, what we call retrospectives, to have sometimes also expositions. We have right now an exposition started like last week with about the major director, Pasolini, and so that's the job of the Cinémathèque. But I mean, I'm doing all the job. The job is done by some very good people, and especially the director, who's Serge Toubiana, who is a great person too.
You came to France as a young man of 20 years, or in your early 20s, and when did you discover the Cinémathèque? Shortly after your arrival, or when did that institution play a part in your life?
No, I was coming from a country, Greece, where I haven't seen so many movies. The only movies you could see at that period was a very conservative government, even more than conservative. The only movies you could see, they were cowboy movies and very light, extremely light movies. I would say empty movies. There are some. And when I arrived in France, I started studying literature at the Sorbonne, and there are some friends. They said, "Let's come to the Cinémathèque." I didn't know what exactly was the Cinémathèque, so it was a small theater, smaller than that, and the person who created Langlois used to show movies, all kinds of movies you could find, the important movies. Sometimes he would show movies in Russian movies with Finnish subtitles, for example. So we have to understand what it was about. And the first movie I saw, it was Greed by Erich von Stroheim. I was astonished to see that it was a huge movie. I mean, 3 hours movie, very dark, and really tragedy, no happy end for nothing. And that's to say, okay, the cinema is something important, can do important work and do masterpiece also. So I decided to go to the cinema school, and I finished the cinema school in France.
What a wonderful film to begin a visual education. I mean, Greed is one of the greatest masterpieces, but actually the subject of greed comes back in your most recent film, Le Capital, doesn't it? It's greed.
It's greed. It's about greed. But greed is something permanent in human beings, unfortunately. But we can say the last 20 years became something insane around the world. I think it becomes little by little. I believe it's for did that movie, because I believe that the elected people don't have anymore so much power. The power belongs now to the big money, whatever they're coming from the banks or from the financial societies.
It's very interesting because your very first films were thrillers, were films that were exciting to see, but of course they were about criminals. And then you made films about crimes in politics, and in the end we have these criminals who deal with money.
Crime is permanent in our societies.
But that means that the genre that you used in the beginning and adapted so wonderfully with Z, you know, one of the most intelligent thrillers ever made, in my opinion, on every level, that this genre seems to be still appropriate to deal with the difficulties and the problems of society.
I think Z is built cinematographically like a tragedy. I think if you go back to the ancient theater 2,500 years ago, they created all those plays, and today the construction of the architecture of a play or of a movie, it's exactly the way they used to be. They started to do it, and we continue. So we're speaking about thriller. I don't like very much the word thriller, because I mean thrilling. I prefer suspense, because it's something we wait to know what's going to happen, what's next. It's like in our lives. It's for what we buy every morning, the newspaper, to know what's happening, what's going to happen. So I think I'm trying to build my movies with that spirit. And of course, it's not always very easy. And sometimes when I deal with the real stories, it's very difficult, because I have to respect completely the ethics of the story, the ethics of the characters, and the ethics also of the situations. Everybody knows that with the cinema we can play, have tricks, and do anything you want. I'm trying not to cheat with the viewer. I would like the viewer to have a point of view of the situation. And it's very difficult, because a real story takes place, what happens during months, sometimes years. And then in the cinema you do it in 2 hours. So I'm trying to find a way to be very, very, how can I say, honest and ethics with what I'm saying to the audience, because finally I have to respect the audience.
Yes, in the end it is us, the viewers, who have to take sides. And this is what your films are mostly about. It's about the obligation that we all have to make our minds up, to decide, to find our position. In your biography, I think it must have been traumatic that your father, who was a hero of the resistance during the war, during the German occupation, was not honored for his deeds.
He went to jail afterwards.
He went to jail afterwards because he was considered a communist. So this injustice, did it have an impact on you? Of course, it must have.
I don't know. To tell you the truth, I'm not trying to go down the caves to see what's coming from what comes my how can I say, my passion for that kind of stories. I like to tell stories about human beings, about us finally, about the power, and about also the resistance some people have. I think resistance is very important in life, to resist. Not to resist against a big enemy, but resist also every day in the most small things you don't like, or you disapprove, or you think they're injustice. I think it's my feeling, this is the most important thing, the resistance.
I can't agree more. So when do we learn in life to take sides? Is it in school, when we are like, the teacher does us wrong with one thing and we object, and then we get punished for that? You know, these experiences everybody makes in life. When do you think this éducation sentimentale begins? When
if you're sure you're right, you should have to start again.
Okay.
I have a brother who is a very genius, who used to correct the professors. He used to say, this is not written like, you must write like this. The professor was crazy. He said, what do you say there? He said, no, you need 2 hours for this word. And he was thrown out, and he came back, he started again. I think he was right.
Yes. You know, very few people appreciate criticism. But the experience that you just tell me, I had the same one with my professor at the university. She was giving a lecture, and I said, oh, you're wrong here. It was the other way. And she was not embarrassed. She liked me for being that controversial.
Yeah, but you don't have to humiliate people. That's important also.
Yeah, that's right.
To try to find a way to say it in a kind way, to not humiliate a professor, but I think you do have to do it.
And therefore you can also live with criticism, with film critics, who actually, some of them misunderstood Z when it came out. The famous Cahiers du Cinéma, I think they were the only paper, who started a debate about a film with such a political impact could be that mainstream in the style and in the making. You know, it should have been an underground film. They would have liked it better. They liked the idea of the filmmaker who has to struggle against the movie industry to get his message out or his artistic vision fulfilled. And since this film came so easily to everybody, it was a huge success in 1969. I mean, this criticism obviously was false, is there anything like a false criticism or just?
First, let me tell you, I like to debate,
yeah.
But I never comment the critics. They do a job, it's their job, they like it, they don't like it. I know a lot of people don't like my movies, or some of my movies, or all my movies. So I don't have to try to convince them to like movies, but I know a lot of people like my movies also. That's a kind of normal situation. So the critics have to do their job, and I believe the directors, unless myself, I never criticize, I never comment the critics, whatever they are. Because let me tell you also, we like the critics who do good critics, we hate the ones who don't good critics. So we have to be coherent.
Because in the 50s, with this Cahiers du Cinéma and with the Cinematheque, it was like, you know, the Nouvelle Vague was emerging from film criticism. It was young critics who made films in the 50s. At that time, you were already working as an assistant director in the late 50s for famous masters like René Clair, Henri Verneuil, Jacques Becker, I think. And you were working on various types of movies with all the big stars of that time. Simone Signoret and you name it, Jean Seberg, and so you got, you know, somehow you were positioned within the movie industry already, where others were still, you know, establishing themselves. What was your idea back then of, you know, these divided worlds between the established cinema in France and the Nouvelle Vague? Where was your position at that time?
La Nouvelle Vague, the New Wave, was a very important movement in France, and it's linked also something important. It was linked to the technical changes, small cameras, fast stock, fast film. So they were able to shoot in real setting places instead to have to go to the big stage to build this. That was a way to change. It happens every time we have a technical new techniques appear in the cinema. If you started with this, we had the silent cinema, even we call it silent, never was silent. But anyway, when the speaking cinema arrived, the cinema changed completely. The perception of the movies, the choice of the movies and the stories and so forth. Then we have the period of the Nouvelle Vague. The Nouvelle Vague, in a certain way, we can say that's a little bit the daughter or the boy of the cinema, Italian cinema, period of after the war. Rossellini, yes.
Neorealism, yes.
That's right, the neorealism. But they went far away from what they did, the Italians, and it was a very important period for the cinema. Of course, I was assistant. I was very lucky to work with someone like René Clair, who was coming from the silent period of the cinema. And then I worked also with Jacques Demy, who was part of the Nouvelle Vague, a little bit with Agnès Varda also. So there was a kind of big school for me. After having the school, the cinema school, the cinema, yes, IDEC, we call them IDEC, Institute of High Studies for Cinema. I continue my learning working with those directors. And especially because the French assistants to director are not like the Americans. The American assistants, they're preparing the shooting. The French assistants are very close to used to be, still are, very close to the director. They are doing, in some way, the scouting, they're doing the casting. And by doing the casting, I have met all the major actors in Paris. And that was a kind of big school, and I was able to make my first movie, having really as actors, let's say, some of the most important actors in Paris at that period.
And you also had attended film school, which was a new thing back then. Film schools were not established before the 50s. But education on the job was more important to you, I suppose, than film school? Or
oh, yes. And today I say, when young people ask me if they have to go to a school, yes, if they can go to a school, but the schools are very difficult to get in, unless in France, in Europe. The other way is today you have a small camera, and you write a story with friends, you start making movies, you do the editing with your computer. There is the biggest school in my feeling.
Oh, that's wonderful to say, because we have all these young students here who make films and show them here at the festival, and indeed, there's so much talent.
It's much easier now. At that time, in my time, it was very difficult, because you have to have the money to buy a camera, 8 millimeters or 16, and then to send the film to the laboratory to have it back, and then to cut it by yourself, to have a machine for the editing. It was very complex. Today, it's really very easy. You don't need light. You can shot everywhere.
Would that be something for you to do? I mean, just making a film just by yourself without any other people involved, just you and your camera? Could you do that?
Yeah. No. Me and a camera would be enough. We need someone to. But yes, why not? Absolutely. Depends also on the story, of course.
Coming back to Zap, because everybody here knows that film and praises it so much. You took Raoul Cottard, the cameraman of A Bout de Souffle, of the Godard film, to shoot your film, and therefore merging classical cinema, classical type cinema with the Nouvelle Vague element, something that Hollywood was really keen about. You know, they were trying to do the same thing with the new Hollywood cinema, which was a mixture of Nouvelle Vague and classical cinema. So you created a model for that. What was your idea? Were you trying to go after some documentary realism along with the classical storytelling, or did you just see this is the new perspective where cinema is about to go in the future?
As a matter of fact, I asked to Raoul Cottard to do the movie because I like his work, of course, and I knew also that he was very fast. I didn't have enough money for the movie, and I need a DP to be really fast. Did not need a lot of light. Some others DPs with whom I have worked before, so that was one of the reasons. And then we became very friends, and I shot also another movie, next movie I did with him, and I would have continued with him, but he became director, so he stopped doing. But it was a great experience, because with Cottard he used to put lights on the ceiling, and then we could shoot all the scenes without redoing the lights, which happened before. That was a kind of big facility, and for the actors, and for myself, and for the camera, for everybody. And we have handheld camera. It would make the whole thing even more easier, and also could shoot faster, because we didn't have so much time. We did the movie in something like 52 days, and we had a small budget. Because when I was giving the script to the producers and the distributors, they used to say, but this is not a movie, there is no love story, there is no main character, there's too many characters, nobody will be able to follow all those characters who change permanently. And you know, Yves Montand looks like being the big star of the movie. If you see the movie, the movie lasts 2 hours, 2 hours 5 minutes, and Montand is there for 12 minutes only, even with his photos. So they say, no, the Montand is not, it's not the movie. So it was very difficult to find the movie. Nobody would believe that that movie could be a big success. We have done it, all of us, and myself and the actors, because we like to do something against the Greek colonists, and against that kind of justice. And we did it with, I think, with a big passion. And probably this passion was understood by the audiences.
Indeed, these Greek military government was supported by the US. You know, it came into power with the help of the US, wasn't it?
As usual at that time.
Yes, like everybody else. But still, Hollywood gave you an Oscar for the film. Weren't you surprised?
No, absolutely not. Because, you know, we say the Americans. They are not the Americans. They are Americans. They are Americans. All kind of Americans. And that after they asked me also to make movies in the United States. But I didn't have the subjects. I didn't know very well the United States, and I didn't speak any English by the time. And I would like to make movies in Europe. And I went later to the United States with Missing, because also the conditions are completely the way I like them to be.
Some people, I think, were still taking you for a communist, and then you made The Confession, which was a film against Stalinism and against the evil sides of radical communism when being, you know, like turned into dictatorship. Was that easily understood by your followers?
No, it was tough, because even friends of us, when I did The Confession, good friends of ours, they said you did some wrong thing, and some actors refused to participate in the movie. But for me, for Yves Montand, for Simone Signoret, as also a Pune writer, it was important to do it, because we used to belong to a generation. I was younger than them, but we are all the same, more or less, generation, and we are very close after the war to the communist ideas. Why we are close? Because the Soviet Union was with our allies against the Nazis, and we can say also that the first hit against Hitler happened in Stalingrad. From that moment on, and then that time the communist parties and the Soviet Union used to propose a new society, much more justice and much more different from the society in which we live, which has France, for example, in America or England, colonies everywhere in the world, colonialist wars and so forth. So we have that tendency to go to say that's probably a solution for the society. And very quickly we understood, and we were there with our very good, honest feelings, and we understood years later that it was all fake. And so we decided to do that movie, just to say that we believed to something and we were wrong. And that here are the reasons for which we are wrong. And that's the reason for what we made. I don't believe you know that movie, but it's a movie with Yves Montand, Simone Signoret, some other French actors. The Confession. You didn't know? Yeah, but I think by that time you have a very good relationship with the Soviet Union. Probably that was the reason. And it's the story of one of the people who are accused to be spies in Czechoslovakia. He was living in France. And his wife was French. It's the reason for. And he told his story. They were 15, I think 13, and he was the one survivor. All of the others are executed. And he wrote a book, an extraordinary book, saying every day what happens exactly. And it's an extraordinary book. Even today, it's important to read it to understand that how wrong it is to take a party as the ideas of a party like religious ideas, and to believe totally to them. It's the worst thing to do, in my feeling.
It's hard to believe how French intellectuals like Picasso supported Stalinist Russia in the post-war period. You know, how naive people were actually looking towards the East.
Yes, after the 56, when the Soviet Union invaded the Budapest, all the intellectuals were part of the Communist Party, and then they understood that Soviet Union has a kind of way of thinking and being and doing completely different from what they were saying. Anyway.
And after that, you went to Allende's Chile, and shot State of Siege. What was your impression of Allende's short-lived period?
I met Allende. Saw him 3 or 4 times, and the first time he have a lunch with him, he said to me, "Go around and say to everybody, I'm not trying to make a communist country. I would like to have a democracy, real democracy. I would like everybody to be free, and so forth." And the other time also I have had discussions with him, and he was a great man. He was a doctor. He has a small house, and his daughters were living with him. I mean, he was really a poor man, but a good politician with good ideas. And probably if it's for what he ended up by winning the elections and then being also killed and destroyed by the American Mr. Nixon at that period. So I had a movie to make. After there was a movie about, I was planning to make a movie about an American ambassador who's in Greece, and by that period Iran completed Greece because he was very close to the royal family. And after Greece he went to Guatemala, and he created another situation. And after Guatemala he went to, I think, Kuala Lumpur, and there he was killed. So I tried to see who was that guy and what he has done in Latin America. I went to Latin America, and then I discovered there was another situation. I discovered also there was a movement, the Tupamaros was a kind of leftist movement by no violence. And a day they get into the violence. They kidnapped an American advisor, and they asked for the government to free I don't know how many prisoners, and if not, they will kill the American. And the government, very intelligent, they didn't, and they obliged them to kill him. And that was, in a certain way, the end of them. So that story, it was very interesting to me. So that I make State of Siege, and the only place in Latin America where I can shoot it was in Chile that period, under Allende.
Did you have a feeling that this that the great man Allende might have such a terrible fate to fear? I mean, could you sense it that he was in danger like this?
They knew. The people around his with whom I didn't speak with him about that, but people very close to him, in particular his daughter, they knew that something wrong will happen. They didn't know how wrong would be. But he was great also because at the end of when the military took the power and they started bombing the palace, the presidential palace, he received phone calls from Europe and from different places. Today we send you a plane to come back. He said, no, I will stay here with my people until the end. And that was also very extraordinary for a politician.
In your later film, Missing, I think we see images that could stand for the whole tragedies of South American countries at that time, and the image of the stadium full of prisoners, I found unforgettable. When I saw the film at the age of 15, those images stay and raise a concern. It's not just the images; it's the great story with Jack Lemmon as the father of a lost man. He's looking for his son, and at the same time developing some sort of a conscience, being an unpolitical person in the first place. Could we just talk about that film? This is 1982 film, I think, The Missing.
No, that film, it was one of the several scripts I have received from Hollywood, and but I like they sent me the script and the book. It was a good producer, and I read both, and the script I didn't like it, and I called the producer to tell him that I liked the 80 last pages of the story. It was a real story of American father going to look his son who disappeared during the coup of Pinochet. And I said, he said, okay, come to New York to discuss about that. And I went to New York to discuss about that. And he said, okay, let's sign. I said, no, we don't sign. I will do an outline, and if you like it, you go on. If you don't like it, we forget this. And then I did the outline of 60 pages, and they accepted. And then we found an American writer also to write the old script, and I asked it to the Universal and to the Eddie Lewis, who is the producer, to have completely free, to be free to do the movie my way, not their way. And they accepted, except for Jack Lemmon. Well, in a meeting, the first meeting we have for casting, I said I would like Jack Lemmon. Everybody looked at each other, said, big silence, and then the chief of them said, are we doing a kind of comedy there? I said, no, Jack Lemmon is a great actor. And I told them two movies, which I like very much with him, the others also, but this one, it was very, very serious movies. It was The Apartment, which I think it's a comedy, but it's a very serious movie. And then Save the Tiger, it's another great movie by Jack Lemmon. There was a big fight. There was a big fight because they proposed, they said Gene Hackman likes the script, he would like to play the role. I said, when Gene Hackman goes to see the ambassador, for those who know the movie Ambassador, there's a scene with an ambassador, and the American ambassador lies to him, to the father. Say, Gene Hackman, we box him. I need someone who accepts what the ambassador says. By the end, they accepted. And I think at the end they were very happy because Jack was great to work with him, and he was nominated, and he had the award in Cannes for the interpretation, and he was liked by everybody. He did an extraordinary job.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe he made all these great films in America and people wouldn't appreciate him as the great actor that he was. Billy Wilder saw the quality in him, obviously. And, there's a female quality in his masculinity, He's a very soft man. And
yes, because he's a middle-class American. He's a businessman. He was voting for Nixon. And he was a very nice person. And he goes there, he does like his son, because his son likes to play guitar, to make movies, to write articles about Chile and so forth. And then he discovers, and he's very patriot. And then he discovers little by little that his son is a good person, And then his country does something very wrong in Chile. He starts changing completely. And that's exactly what happens to Ed Horman, whom I met. And then when the movie was finished, he went around to speak about his case. And he became a very, very different person after that experience.
May I talk to you about another actress this time, who is sometimes misunderstood in our talent, Romy Schneider. You worked with her in the film Claire des Femmes. It's not very little known among your work, I guess, but it's a very rare film in your work because it's an emotional, very tragic, realistic melodrama, if I may say so. It's about death. It's about yeah. It's actually it's a bit similar to Haneke's Love in a way. It's about does love survive, you know, the fear of dying and losing each other. If I may.
It's a love story. It's a love story. Everybody asking me, even after the movie, why you don't don't make a love story?
Yeah.
Like it would be something impossible to me. It's a good love story with Yves Montand and Romy Schneider. And I did this, when I read the book by Romain Gary, who's a major writer in France. I called Romy and I said, I would like to make that movie and I would like you to play it. Do you accept? Because I don't see another person, and she accepted immediately. And it was also a great relationship, because he was a very sensitive person, a person with huge qualities as an actress, and also she was a wounded person, I think, because she has a very difficult life. She started when she was 16 years old. She became a worldwide star.
Playing a fairy tale princess in the Sissi trilogy.
And then she came to Paris and she met Alain Delon. She had a difficult, even as a star, she has a difficult life. And it was very interesting working with her and doing that love story, which I think it's a movie I liked very much.
This vulnerability of hers shows in all her roles somehow. She seems to be so full of love and yet so insecure at the same time. Was that your impression?
She was completely insecure. She was very insecure, and she used to create a very close relationship with the director, because she should believe the director, and she was making propositions all the time and ideas for this and that, and she accepted if I would say no, it's not right, and so forth. It was really an extraordinary collaboration.
This is a great responsibility for a director to work with the person who's not dependent on your guidance.
You know, I hear all the time that the actors are this and that, and even someone told me, I'm not sure it's real, but someone told me that Hitchcock said once they are cattle. I hate that. I don't believe Hitchcock would say that, but anyway, I think some directors believe that the actors are like this. For me, the actors are the main collaborators for the director, because those are the ones who bring to us viewers, the story. A bad actor can destroy completely the story and the movie. So I have a big respect for them, and I work as much as I can. Of course, it's not always very easy. And I think we speak also about the direction of the actors. I think the direction, half of the direction is be done the moment you make the choice for an actor. And then the rest of it, it's kind of relationship you create with him or her, and you go on, you make the movie. And because I repeat, they are very, very important to me.
Speaking of the importance of actors, a Music Box is a wonderful courtroom drama, just because it's a woman actually who's the lead in this film.
Jessica Lange, yes.
That makes it different from most courtroom dramas that we know. And at the same time, it's a father-daughter conflict. Usually, these stories are told between fathers and sons, you know, in American films. So somehow you switched a bit, you know, in the genre conventions, and making this film extremely unique. Still, it's a political film. It's about a film about personal relations towards, you know, well, how can we say it? A past that has to be, you know, uncovered, even if it's painful for the person who finds out about her own father. Then sorry, I'm summing it up a bit briefly. Music Box won several awards and was one of your major successes. Could you talk about this film?
Music Box, every movie has its own story. I have worked with an American movie called Betrayed with Joe Esterhaus, who was a good writer. And during the working we have done a big trip around America because I would like to meet that country from the deep country. And he told me stories about what happened when he was young in Chicago. He comes from Chicago. And I told him, why you don't write this story to make a movie about that? And then months later, when we finished the movie and he came to Paris to see the first editing I did, he liked the first editing with producer. And during the dinner, he gave me a script, said, no, I did the script you told me about. And it was the Music Box. And it was the idea, what I liked that story, it was that it's the question, who is our father? Or our mother, but essentially our father. Our father is a hero, of course. And of course, our father is also a human being. He can be a good person, he can be a bad person. And what do we do if we learn a day that was really a bad person? So that was the question. That was the story in the movie. And we worked again with Joe Esterhaus. We finished the script and asked Jessica Lange, whom I liked very much in the movies I have seen her, to play the role, and she accepted. And it was also another experience with an actress, completely different from the others I had.
Was she as tough a person as she appears in the film? You know, in the first part of the film, she's very in charge of what she's doing. Jessica Lange herself, was she like that, or did you just play it that way? Was she a very powerful person? Was she, in contrast to Romy Schneider, for example?
Jessica, she has something Schneider used to have. Jessica was a very, very pretty girl, and she was a model. The day of being a model, they brought her into the cinema. I believe the first movie she did was with the second King Kong.
Yeah,
yes,
Kong,
wasn't
it?
it?
Right.
Yes.
But John Gilman, I saw with her, yeah.
So it was so pretty. I mean, and then she worked with much more serious movies and so forth. And she has no big experience of cinema. And I'll tell you an anecdote. The problem I had with then I have a major German actor, Armin Müller-Stahl, great actor, one of the biggest in Germany, and I like to work with him. And he came there, and Armin used to like to rehearse, because a theater actor, he used to like to rehearse. Jessica didn't like to rehearse. I mean, 1 take, 2 takes, 3 takes, it was over. The fourth take for her, she was not good. She was repeating things, she was trying to be. So I had to find a way to rehearse for Armin and not to rehearse for her. And Armin understood very quickly the whole thing, and we went good. After 2 or 3 days, they had a good relationship, and we went on. I think they're great, both of them, in the movie.
Armin Müller-Stahl actually considers you the best director in the world, if I may say this. Yeah, he said that.
He didn't tell to me. I ask him next time.
No, it must be true. Yeah. I was recently reminded of one of your films, Eden is the West, because I don't know if you know about that, but in Europe, more than 350 people died recently on the shores of Italy, fugitives coming from Africa who sank in their ships. And your film Eden is the West is a beautiful personal story about a stranger in a foreign land, told like the Odyssey. Therefore, it's called Eden is the West, maybe. And could you just give us some impressions about your concern about this film? Because again, you pointed the finger on an issue that we love to overlook in Europe. The tragedy of fugitives coming in constantly, risking their lives for a not even always better life that they might expect in the European community, which is supposed to be a very humanist. They even won the Nobel Prize of Peace last year, the European community, for being that noble towards the human kind. And that's obviously not the case when it comes to refugees knocking at their doors. And you were wise enough to make this film even in 2009, way before these actual tragedies happened.
The European countries are very scared and probably a little bit racistic with the immigrants. And of course, at that time, it was less difficult for the immigrants like it is today. A lot of them die. So my idea was to show that these people who cross countries, and sometimes the sea, and they come to France, or to other countries, but especially to France, they are not monsters, they are not thieves. Among them, probably there are some thieves, but most of them, they are not thieves, they are good people, they are people also with a lot of courage, and they have to be respected. So I'm trying to see that kind of trajectory, that kind of adventure of these people, of a young man. I didn't say where he's coming from, I didn't say who is his language, it's just a human being. And I show that he has to be accepted, and especially to be respected as a human being. And then he can stay or not in country. This is a problem of the politics of the country, but essentially he has to be respected. That was my idea of making that movie. And I tried also to say, unless for the French people, that something like 40%, 35 to 40% of French people are sons or grandsons or grand-grandsons for an immigrant. This is the French history. But I think that continue to have the racistic problems right now because of the economical problems and also kind of racism. People think that people coming from outside, they are negative for the country.
And it's also a poetic film. The opening scenes, which are like a silent film, which are so beautifully shot and edited. It's like, in a way, neorealism took something from Chaplin, and I could see the same qualities in this film of yours, because this is the universal language of cinema. It doesn't require words, it's just made of images, and which are universal. And sometimes people see Mr. Costa Gavras' work as as political because the stories are political. But what is political about the films is that everybody can understand them because the language is universal. I mean, can I put it like that?
Yeah, like you spoke about Charlie Chaplin. If you haven't seen it recently, really watch the Modern Times. You see, it speaks about our time today, exactly. It's been done in the late 20s, early 50s, early 30s. I used to show to my grandson and my granddaughters, and it's amazing. I have seen it the last time for, I don't know, 10 times, because they repeat again and again. They would like to see it. So I know every shot now. It is extraordinary what he had done at that period. He was talking really about society, but everything happens today, happened that time and even today. I think it's a big lesson. I don't know if you answered to your question.
Yeah, about the universal language of cinema. Yeah, silent cinema. That's present and ever present in your film, in your films. Well, we almost went through your work. There's just one film I would have liked to mention, and that is Amen, which is based on the famous stage play The Deputy by Rolf Hochhuth about the critical role of the Catholic Church during the Second World War in Germany. The Pope, the contemporary Pope maybe, the new Pope might reveal the secrets, I don't know. The Vatican closed their archives, about that. Yes. But maybe we might find out what really happened.
They should try, yes.
They should.
To open them. No, the new Pope, it's a nice Pope, I mean, it's very interesting.
Yes.
He looks like a good man. Let's hope that he will continue. No, the idea is against about, as I was saying before, about the resistance. I like that story. That story was a play initially, and he was written by a German, Rolf Hochhuth. He was 27 years old when he wrote that play in the early 60s. It was a huge scandal around the world. And then some people tried to make the movie, and the movie disappeared completely. And a few years ago, I was discussing with Claude Berry, who was a director and also a great producer in France, one of the best. And they said, let's make a movie, and we discussed about the subject, and then we discussed about that subject. And I said, let's make that story, but not the play, but to show essentially that two people, one priest, Catholic priest, and one officer German, learn about what's going on in the camps, and they try to inform everybody in the risk of their lives. And of course, at the end, they risk their lives. They lose their lives. And so we did the story because I discovered, and we knew but there was the research I did. It was that the Pope used to know everything. The Pope Pius XII used to know everything about what's going on in the camps, and he didn't speak. And some people asked him to say something, he never said nothing. And especially when the Jews in Rome was arrested near the Vatican, Countess came saying, this same morning, they arrest Jews, probably you have to do something. He said, he did nothing. So that was the idea. You have a major person. At that time, the Pope was very respected. If you would say something against the Pope in Italy, for example, you go to jail. Today, of course, they make jokes about him on all televisions. The situation has changed completely. But at that time was, and he didn't. So that was the idea. You have two persons who resist, and one person who can do something, even if that won't change Hitler, but he could say he doesn't do it. So that was essentially the idea of the movie, and I think it was, I was very lucky to have major German actors and French actors for the movie.
I'd like to open the discussion now to the audience. I'm sure there are so many questions to Mr. Costa Gavras.
Yes, I cannot understand. I will never did it. I will never do it. To have a script of a story to illustrate a story. I think a story, whatever is a book, I have to work with a writer or myself sometimes to put in that story something which interests me directly. The reason for what I'm doing the story for. I was just saying before, I did the Aiming, which was a play, because of the resistance of two people. What interested me was the resistance of these two people. So I always work on to the script. Of course, I do the shooting, and then I work also with the editing, because I believe during the editing period is where the movie is made, the movie is written and made. So I believe the director has to be there. Let's say if the editor works 8 hours a day, the director has to be there 7 hours. Montand, he was a one-man show person. He was, of course, he wasn't. He didn't have any big experience of acting the cinema, essentially. And when I did my, Jack Lemmon has a huge experience. I've done several movies. And Montand, he has done some movies, but he was not very happy with those movies. And also he told me a day he told also to the newspapers after a while that he was, as an actor, he was imitating in a certain way Humphrey Bogart or other American important actors. And then the first movie we did together, I asked him to play with his southern accent. He was fighting his accent because with southern accent in France is a kind of comedy for comedies, like Fernandel and some other very funny actors who had. And then he ended up by accepting. And then he was, as an actor, that accent gives him a mask, and he felt completely free. And he was really, for the first time, he said himself in several autobiographies or biographies he did, that he felt really what is to be an actor. That comes from inside and not from outside. And this inside came. Jack Lemmon, he had an extraordinary experience. Of course, he worked with major actors, and he was some person. He's a very shy person, and he was very sensitive. He could understand immediately. And there was a small element which I liked very much. It's the first actor in my whole life, cinema life, that I gave him the script on a Wednesday, I think. He called it Friday morning. He said, "Come to have a drink and discuss about the script." I went to his house in Beverly Hills, and I said, "I like your script. I do your story." And I said, "Okay, Jack, the character is this and that." He stopped me. He said, "During the shooting, you say I do." And it happened like this all the time. So it's Montand was much more difficult. You have to discuss a lot about the character. He used sometimes wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, call and say, "Why I'm doing this thing there?" So I had to answer to him. But we're very friends enough to be able to work together for several movies and have a good relationship. Osha, Kutan, and the others at that period have made movies, myself too, about the situation of that particular period. Today, the situation is different. I think as a director, I'm looking what's going around and I see what interests me deeply or what I can do to tell the things I feel about our society. This changed permanently, I think. We cannot make the movies we made that time the same way we make them today, because everything is changed. And the viewers also who have changed also. You have a different experience. You see the movies differently. You see them in television, sometimes, unfortunately, your telephone, which is a completely idiot, I'm feeling. And I think, so we change also. And we follow as much as far as we can. And sometimes you cannot anymore, so we stop. Yes. Yes. You know, a film, what's a film? It's a story, huh? A film, it's a story, it's not speech. Political speech, not either, I keep saying that all the time, it's not either a kind of universitarian lesson. It's a show. You go to the cinema to have feelings, good feelings, to have to laugh, to cry, to hate, to love, that kind of human feelings. And with those feelings, of course, you do something. Or if you don't like, you do nothing. You go back home and watch television. But I think that's the cinema. I'm trying to make my movies the way I like watching movies. So that's, if you don't have a good story, you cannot make a good movie, I believe.
My question is, do you think there's something about the cinematic medium that allows you to expose the good or bad aspects of a political ideology? Is there something about the medium of cinema that helps you expose an ideology, the flaws of an ideology?
That's a difficult question. Huh? Ideology. It's a good word. It's coming from the Greek ideas, which run the society. And the answer in Greek is to say an ideology is born and then goes up and then dies. And you have to change it. And I'm afraid in our societies, we stick on an ideology, you stay there for all our lives. I believe it's wrong. I believe we have to find any time, any historical period, or the one we live, something new. Someone, my generation was young, we used to talk about permanent revolution. Of course, I think the meaning of that for me, it's the permanent changes in a society, to find solutions every time something new appears, because everything changes all the time. Not to go around with guns and kill people, destroy things. And the revolution is not only this. I don't believe so much in that revolution, except for some particular cases, but this is another discussion you can make if you like. But I think the ideologies are important for this. I heard years ago, and some people keep saying it, the ideologies are dead, which means we live in a society with dead ideologies. It's a dead society. I think also this is wrong too.
And as we all know, resistance is a very common theme in your films. And interestingly, it also mirrors the life of some of your films. So I wanted to know, during the years, how have you come to terms with, or how have you come to deal with censorship, both political and societal?
How have you dealt with censorship? Did you ever have to deal with censorship in your
You know, we live in a country, France, I live in a country, France, where there is no censorship. There used to be censorship in the ancient times. I mean, in the 50s, during the Algerian War, there's a kind of censorship. But then all of us, all the filmmakers and producers and so forth, we fought against that, and there is no any more censorship. Of course, we have to protect the young people from some movies, extremely violent and so forth. And when I went to the United States, there was not really a censorship. There were some words, excuse me, like fucking and so forth, that people say the company asked to change them for the movie when it goes to television. That's the only censorship I have experienced in my life, of director's life. I know there is this censorship. I was told, for example, that in your country there are some sexual scenes they are cut when the movies go to the big audience. I think it's wrong, because it's considered the audience like children, and tell them what to have to see, what they have to think, what. I mean, the audience are adult person. You have to trust them, and I don't believe they have. Of course, there are some movies with extreme violence, so it's better the very young children not to be able to see them. It's much better because they can understand. They cannot understand really the whole thing. But I think for after 18 years, 18 years old, the people have to see everything. I think one of the good things cinema done since the beginning, it was able to help us to meet other people, to meet Indians in France, to meet French in India, and so forth, and everywhere. And the other thing it permits us is to see that as human beings, we can be also naked. And it's important.
Thank you so much.
I think, first of all, and in Europe, and particularly in France, we fight a lot to have all the other countries in Europe to be able to make movies. We believe that every country has to have his cinema, have his own images, not to live also with images to other people. This is important. Of course, you have your images, a lot of your images. You don't have a problem in that point, I believe. So there are new directors coming up every day. I have one in my home. It's my son. I would like him to be an engineer, to be, to be something much more serious than the cinema, but he's making movies, so it's like this. And I think they have a nice vision of the society, and they have to have a different vision of society, and especially to decide also why they're doing a movie. They like to be in the newspaper, they like to make money, or they like to say something about us, about the society, about the people. I like the last ones. I prefer the last ones. And I think there is some, unless after the movies I have seen. And I understood also that even your country, you have a new cinema coming up, and some friends gave me a list of the movies which I bought. On the way back in Paris, I will watch them, because they say you have a new cinema. Speaking, it's not, you don't, because idea about the Indian cinema is that you make all those big, let's say, comedies and musical movies. But I know since Satya Ray, even after him, there is another cinema also been there. And I understood that it's growing up more and more. And I think this is important also because you have an extraordinary production. And among all the musical you do, it's important to do also movies. And the list that I was given, it was really something interesting, I believe. No, the only thing when I watch back and see what movies I say should be ashamed for the movie I have made before, and up until now, I saw none of my movies. This is the only satisfaction I can have, and I try always to do the movies my way, to do the movies I like to make, and not make movies just for making money. And I was proposing some of them. Particularly the United States. That's the whole criticism I can have about my movies, not to be ashamed of something of the movies I have done, or one of movies, or two movies. I am not. Probably I'm too good with myself, no?
No, we agree. I agree completely. You have a wonderful work, 10 to 22 films that are really outstanding.
Thank you.
Coming to India.